This is episode 260 of the Lifestylist Podcast. My name's Luke Story, and I am your faithful host, folks. We're taking the questions today, of course, from the Lifestylist Podcast Facebook group, and I would love to invite you to join that group. If I don't answer your questions in the group or on a future episode, it's very likely that one of our brilliant members will do so, and in many cases, much better than I could. So please join the group, join the party. We're having a lot of fun in there. And the amount of knowledge and enthusiasm of the members is astonishing. So I'm so pleased that we started that group and that we're keeping it going. And I can't wait to put some events together this year in 2020 where members of that group and people like you can have the opportunity to come hang out and spend some time together in person. More on that later. First, let's talk about next Tuesday's episode where I get back to the interviews. This one's called The Supremely Psychedelic Power of the Lucia Light with Alison Pellicier. And man, that is a mind-blowing episode. If you caught the Joe Dispenza episode this week, which would have been Tuesday, it's now Friday, you'll know that, the power of the mind and your ability to produce your own DMT and all of these things is quite real and profoundly transformative. And this thing called the Lucia Light entered my life a couple years ago. I think the first time I did it was at Paleo FX. By the way, I'll be back speaking at Paleo FX and doing a bunch of podcasts April 24th through 26th, 2020 in lovely Austin, Texas. Anyway, that's where I first did the Lucia Light. Immediately came home to LA. I was so impressed with this thing. And trust me, I try a lot of stuff. I mean, just because I'm in this gig, I have the opportunity to try all the supplements and all the biohacks and all the crazy devices. And some of them are cool. Some of them not so much. Some of them have a lot of bells and whistles, but you don't really feel anything. The Lucia Light knocked me on my ass. It was like the closest thing I could equate it to, and I'm being really honest here, would be an ayahuasca journey. That's how trippy it is. And also just elevating and amazing. So I came back to LA and I tracked down this thing called the Lucia Light, found no one really has them. There's only a few of them in the world. They're not cheap. The small personal unit is, I believe, $8,500 or so. The group version of it, where you can sit up to 6 people. Well, actually, you would lie under this light. You'll hear about it in the episode on Tuesday, but 6 people can go into that one. It's I think $23,000. So it's not the kind of thing everyone just decides to have in their home. But I was so impressed by it, and I'm so obsessed with this freaking light that I had to track down their resident U.S. expert, Allison. And then we've since become friends, and she's an amazing woman. And in that interview, we not only talk about that light, but just, God, all of her shamanic experiences and just the journey she's been on. She's a fantastic lady. And so that one's really fun. And that episode that comes out Tuesday was recorded right after we did a journey with the Lucia Light. So it's a very elevated conversation. My friend Ashley was here at the time and did the light with us. And I actually threw her on the mic. So it's one of those fun, sort of spontaneous, hey, you're on the podcast. And she did great. So that's going to be a fun episode next Tuesday. To make sure that you don't miss that show or any upcoming show, here's how you hack the system, guys. You just subscribe to this podcast. And if you do that, it also does me some good, because that means iTunes recognizes more downloads. And the more downloads I get, the higher I am ranked. And that means this podcast becomes more visible and gets recommended to more people, etc. So there's a twofold benefit to subscribing to the show. It just makes sure that every week, each and every episode I do is downloaded to your device or computer, wherever you listen to podcasts, without you having to do anything. And also helps me stay very active in the iTunes algorithm. So that's what's up on Tuesday. And then we've got a couple upcoming events. Of course, I mentioned Paleo FX. I'll also be speaking at the Bulletproof Upgrade Labs Biohacking Conference in Beverly Hills, March 27th through 29th. And then again, back in LA at Meet Delic, which is a really exciting psychedelic wellness summit, May 2nd and 3rd, 2020. And you can find tickets to all the events and more info at lukestory.com/events. See how that works? /events is where you find the events. We're really clever around here. And I'd also like to invite you to follow me on Instagram. In fact, If you were following me on Instagram right now at the time of you listening to this podcast or watching the YouTube video, because now I recently discovered I can do webcam videos of these solo shows, which is, to be honest, quite mortifying and just maybe way too intimate for me. But whatever, I clicked record and now it's a thing. But if you were following me on Instagram, you could be watching the live stream of the crazy antics that go on behind the scenes. So I've been live streaming on Instagram for the last hour, sitting here playing guitar, playing with my dog, acting a fool, just being real silly. And some of you might find that entertaining. Some of you might find it deeply annoying. You'll just have to find out by following me on Instagram and especially paying attention to my stories and live feeds, because sometimes they get pretty crazy. So my Instagram is at LukeStory, LukeStorey. Follow me over there. But if you want to ask questions, again, the place to do that is not by DMing me on Instagram. God bless you. I appreciate those of you that reach out, and I'm so grateful to have anyone that wants to have anything to do with me. It's flattering and humbling and awesome. But I just, for the record, don't have time to reply to Instagram DMs. It's too overwhelming. It would be like a part-time job. So all questions get diverted to the group. That way, if you have a question about this or that, I can answer it in the group or on a show like this, and 5,000 people will get to hear the answer instead of just you. So you know what I'm saying? Don't be selfish. Like, ask the Facebook group, and everyone benefits from the question and the answer. Okay, here's what's up. Here's the questions. Let's get right into this. Michael, one of our great members, asks, are there any updates on the aftermath of your Rhythmia experience? And what Michael is referring to is a podcast series I did in 2019 based on and recorded at this place called Rhythmia in Costa Rica, where I went and had the first 4 of my ayahuasca experiences. And I did a series of podcasts. I think there were 3 episodes. The series is called Welcome to the Jungle, appropriately enough. And what I did in that particular series was take my recording equipment to Costa Rica, to Rhythmia, which is an amazing place, by the way, and we'll get into that a little bit in a second. And I recorded a play-by-play gonzo-style journalism podcast of the entire experience. I had my recorder on the airplane on the way down there. I mean, it's literally like the whole thing, with the exception, of course, of the actual ayahuasca ceremonies, because not only would it be in bad taste to bring, recording equipment into the ceremony, I'm sure it wouldn't even be allowed, but I also would not be able to work the recording equipment while under the influence of ayahuasca. But apart from the actual ceremonies, I did a very detailed documentation of that whole experience. And if you go back in the feed, in fact, in the iTunes podcast app now, you could just search Luke Jungle and it'll pop right up. So you can go back and listen if you don't know what Michael's talking about. But in reference to his question, interestingly enough, I was so impressed and transformed by the first 4 ceremonies at Rhythmia that I decided to go to another place about 1 year later, which would have been in December of maybe 11 months later, December 2019, which was a month ago or so at the time of this recording. It's early February. And I went to Soltara and did another 4 ceremonies, which was entirely different in total. The whole experience was just completely a departure from the Rhythmia experience. Although you're drinking the same medicine, it's brewed by different people, and the ceremonies are different, the facilities are different, the whole programming and all of that. So what's exciting for you, Michael, should you ever hear this, I can't figure out whether I want to say people's last names. I guess I'd have to ask permission in the group, like, hey, are you guys cool if I say, Michael Jones or whatever his name is? So he's just anonymous Michael right now. But Michael and everyone else, on February 18th, I'm dropping a 2-part episode, which documents my entire experience in a play-by-play way, like I did at Rhythmia, but this time at Soltara. Then on that Friday, February 21st, and this I think is really going to pique your interest, I'm posting a special bonus show where I do a deep dive comparison between the 2 Costa Rican ayahuasca centers. The reason for that bonus episode is because obviously, when I, posted on social media and was doing live streams and whatnot from Soltara, everyone is DMing me and posting, which place is better? I want to do ayahuasca in Costa Rica. Which one should I go to? And I'm like, dude, I can't answer that with any integrity, because it's like saying, what's better, chocolate or vanilla? Like, what's better, a lemon or a lime? Like, I don't know, man. Do you like lemons or limes better? I like them both, and I like Soltara and Rhythmia equally as much for different reasons. But I did manage to put together an outline, which I will soon record. Actually, I got to record that pretty soon, that just details every minute difference between the two experiences, so that people that are interested can decide for themselves which place better serves them. So you can look forward to a lot of recording, coming out about those experiences. Also, in addition, I recently participated in, as fate would have it, 3 different peyote ceremonies, and recorded a podcast about those experiences as well, which I will be releasing sometime this spring. I have quite a number of shows pre-recorded now, I think through May at this point. I'm actually on a recording hiatus for the moment, so I can work on a book and some other things that I'm working on at LS Inc. here. But, the peyote thing is a whole other thing, which I'm going to get into and share with everyone. That said, specifically to Michael's question, what is the aftermath of my initial Rhythmia experience? And I'd have to say, subjectively, what I'm experiencing would be just kind of less triggered emotionally. And it's hard to quantify that and hard to explain. But I have a very clear sense that many of those psychic wounds and trauma and whatnot have been healed. And the indicator of that to me is that when I think about old memories, or I encounter a situation in life that could be stressful or triggering, which of course usually has something to do with relationships of some type, that the emotional charge, kind of that static electricity associated with those memories or past experiences, seems to have diminished substantially. And additionally, I sense that I'm somewhat less dependent on my day-to-day spiritual practices in order to stay connected with God and to stay grounded. There's more of a through line in my life, a deeper sense of surrender, a deeper sense of felt connectivity with spirit, with consciousness, which is really interesting because based on my limited, experience with plant medicines in general, you'd think that it would be disorienting. And what's the word? Disorientating? You'd think that it would make you less grounded because in some cases, you are quite literally out of your body and just having these deep experiences that might send you back into a haze of psychedelia or something of that nature. However, I think because both places I went to do ayahuasca and the shaman that I sat with in the 3 peyote ceremonies put so much emphasis on integration, and that it's not about having some wild ass visual ride, but really about healing and doing the inner work, that I feel the integration has been a huge part of me unpacking those experiences. And that's really helped me to quantify the changes. And so I'm always looking like, okay, here's a situation. How would I have felt about this? How would I have reacted in the past? Am I reacting differently? And I would say by and large, I am reacting differently to life and have a different orientation to life and what my purpose is, and things like that. And of course, all of the micro lessons that I learned throughout those many journeys, I've documented in the podcast and will continue to do so. So I'm not going to do that here, but I would say just kind of in the aftermath, I'm definitely a much better person as a result of participation in those ceremonies. All of that being said, I feel it would be irresponsible to not give the disclaimer and caveat that I unequivocally do not recommend that everyone does plant medicines or the clinical use of psychedelics like MDMA, or people are doing mushroom journeys with therapists now, and there's all kinds of exciting things happening, much of which, by the way, will be explored in depth at the Meet Delic event in LA that I mentioned earlier, May 2nd and 3rd. It's all the world's experts in plant medicine and also in the therapeutic and clinical use of psychedelics. So this is something a lot of people are getting into, but I don't feel qualified myself to say everyone should go do this, even though every time I'm on plant medicines, I'm like, oh my God, my mom and dad need to do this. My brothers, every girlfriend I've ever dated, like everyone I've ever loved and, still continue to love or care about, I think, oh, they need to do this. It's going to heal the world. And because you know that it's healing you in such a profound way. But again, I just would not feel responsible. So for me, it's a bit of a razor's edge kind of, in one way, you could say I'm promoting these journeys and experiences to people because I'm documenting them, but I really have no intention to promote the use of psychedelics or plant medicines, especially being someone who has been sober for 23 years almost. As of February 15th, that's my sobriety birthday, dog, and I take that very seriously. That birthday to me is infinitely more important in many respects, at least, than my actual vaginal birthday. God bless my mama, but man, I was really reborn when I got sober and was freed from a lifetime, really, at that point, of serious addiction issues. So as someone who's been in recovery that whole time and really elevating my consciousness on the natch through many, many years of meditation and float tanks and neurofeedback and spiritual books and teachers and retreats and workshops. And oh my God, just all the work I've put in to heal my soul and spirit. It would be, again, irresponsible for me to just be a cheerleader for these medicines because they are fucking serious. Let me tell you, man, it's not something you want to play around with. These are, in my experience, not party drugs. Like you don't go take ayahuasca to escape your problems. You take ayahuasca, what's likely to happen is you're going to really see your problems and you're going to find the problem is your ass. And sometimes that's not the most fun thing to face. So, I would exercise caution, discernment, and prudence when exploring your curiosity, if you're a newbie, that is, around the medicines. And I used to think it was like bullshit that people even called them plant medicines. I was like, you guys are just justifying going off and doing drugs. Like that's literally how I used to think. And I'll tell you what, drugs and plant medicines are a completely different thing. Although in the experience, I feel like I'm using that word experience a lot. I have to find an alternative. I wish I could like Google synonyms for experience. I'll work on that. I always think of Jimi Hendrix. Are you experienced? And I think he was talking about drugs. You know what I mean? The LSD and whatnot. But the use of plant medicines in a ceremonial context with intention, much different than partying. And that's why especially for those of you that might be someone in recovery, you might have just heard me say, yeah, I went and did ayahuasca 8 times and then I did peyote. You might be going, dog, you're not sober. What are you talking about? And you're right. And some people might be of that opinion and I honor that and that's fine. I'm on my own independent journey and have grown to trust my higher self, my higher power, intuition. And I know when I'm called to experience something for a wholesome reason. And in my life now, there's nothing that I need to escape from. In fact, I want to go into the shadows in a more profound, deep way every day in order to heal them. Because anything that I bring to light tends to be transmuted and transcended. And that's the purpose of my life, literally, is to evolve consciously and to grow in my soul's maturity. And I have found personally that the plant medicines have really helped to facilitate that in a major way. And I can't foresee the future, but based on how much spiritual work I've been able to get done in the past year through my limited, there goes that fucking word experience again, through my limited use of these medicines and experiences. As I said, I'm very much a newbie. I'm just kind of exploring this for the first time. I've been changed, man. I'm a changed man, and there's just no putting the genie back in the bottle. So I foresee this exploration becoming a semi-regular part of my own healing journey. And it's interesting because when I was at Soltara recently in December, I was really thinking about the book that I'm going to write this year, or at least get into process of writing. And I'm kind of narrowing down now daily what that really means to me and what the purpose is and how I can best serve people with my experience and knowledge. And one thing that really came to me was I might be a good bridge for some people, particularly people that have been in recovery or people that have had addiction issues, to explore the realm of not only ceremonial plant medicine use, but also the clinical use of psychedelics, which is something I've not yet explored. But I'll tell you what, I'm fixing to. It's about to go down. I have some contacts, some very qualified psychotherapists, etc., that are working miracles with different molecules. Let's just say, maybe I'll call my book The Molecule Miracle. No, it's not just going to be about that. It's about all kinds of things, but I was called to experience more of them, in a sense, kind of to take one for the team and be willing to walk my talk and experience some of the different medicines, etc., so that I could write about them in a well-rounded way, especially coming from the perspective of addiction recovery, etc. So it was through that intention that peyote recently came into my life, actually. I don't know where the desert is where peyote grows. You know what I mean? I have no idea how to connect the dots. I didn't come home and put out a post like, hey, anyone got any peyote? I want to do it. I was just like, wow, I'd like to try that because it seems something that's missing from my lexicon. And I would add San Pedro and the 5-MeO DMT toad medicine to that. Also the intentional use of psilocybin and even MDMA. These are all things I'm curious about. Oh, one thing I have actually also used with much success periodically is I would consider it microdosing because typically when people take this particular, and this would be a drug, I'm talking about ketamine, typically, to my understanding, historically, people have used ketamine as a for sure party drug to escape reality and go off the rails. In fact, I used to watch, I don't know if it was like one of those rehab shows or maybe it was the kid from Vice who goes and takes all the drugs. Some of those drug shows where like people be on ketamine and I'm going, oh my God, thank God I never did that. That looks horrific. And then through a strange or not strange series of events, I was connected with really small doses of it and trained how to use it in a more therapeutic way, which essentially has to do with going into deep meditative states and using different types of guided meditations and things like that to really be introspective, because the ketamine is not technically a psychedelic, but it does have a very strong dissociative element to its effects. And so it's very useful for doing inner work. And so some of these things are the things that I'm curious about. And now that I've set my intention to explore some of that very consciously, and as I said, with discernment and, the right intention, they've started to kind of come into my life. I just ran into an old friend of mine I know from the fashion industry who I'm sure for the sake of legality wants to remain anonymous in this conversation. But she has now moved into working with the 5-MeO DMT toad medicine and has essentially kind of become a shaman using that medicine, which is fascinating. And that's one of those things I thought, oh, I'd like to try that, and it's an experience that I hear such amazing reports from people like my friend Kyle Kingsbury and Aubrey at On It, and all my cosmonaut buddies that are like way deeper into the medicine than I am. Everyone's like, oh my God. Even my friend, well, I don't know if he wants to. Oh, he doesn't care. My friend Aaron Alexander, who was on the show recently, he's done some of this stuff, and he's like, oh man, I think he told me his whole book unfolded to him in a 15-minute DMT journey. So it's like, these are not people that are like drug addicts trying to escape their problems or mask their trauma. These are people that are like, again, like myself, wanting to face their trauma and heal it. And some of these medicines and even some of the drugs are very useful for doing that if you have the right intention and the right help. So while this is my journey, I do not at all recommend these things for other people. You have to listen to your own heart. You have to be guided. And, I just always want to give that disclaimer because I really would feel I was doing people a disservice if I was like this newbie at plant medicines and was becoming a cheerleader for them and diminishing their value, diminishing their sacredness, and also diminishing the history from which they have evolved and the cultures that have carried them through time to people like me now, a white boy sitting in LA that now has the glorious opportunity to go sit in ceremony with some fantastic healers and shaman and things that we do. On the other hand, if I just kept this to myself and didn't share about them, then how would those traditions be carried on? And how would other people find the healing that I have been able to find for myself? So it's one of those things I can't keep to myself, but I don't want to go shout from the rooftops either. I guess in doing a podcast about such things, it's pretty much a fucking rooftop, which is why I give the disclaimer. So enter at your own risk, do so consciously. But in my own life, I have to say that these experiences, including Rhythmia, getting back to Michael's question there, have been extremely transformative and have done so in record time. I would also like to add that I think my very positive experiences, although they have been challenging, of course, in moments, as anyone who's explored this area would know, I think mine have been very successful for me because there was a lot of groundwork done beforehand. In other words, I didn't just randomly, I wasn't 5 days sober in a complete train wreck coming off heroin, crack, and alcohol and all those things that I did when I was 26 years old. I didn't walk into a ceremony the next week and not have done any therapy and all the work that I've done. So I think for me, having done some foundational work and cleared a lot of the big wreckage out of the way, those particular experiences have been very productive, and I was able to really contextualize what was happening and have a lot of intention and work with those medicines in a way that, like, I really knew what I was doing, even though I was new to it. I knew what my objective was, and my intentions and my prayers were really clear and really strong every time, and I got what I was looking for. I healed my heart, man. I mean, that's what I could say about Rhythmia, just in summary. Oh my God. I mean, just like, it makes me emotional just to take myself back there now, to be honest. It's just, oh man, there's so much. And I'm not like being melodramatic or feeling sorry for myself. As Bob Marley said, and I truly believe this, every man's burden is the heaviest, meaning each of our pain and trauma is subjectively felt, which is with as much depth to each one of us as it is, meaning when I talk about my experiences in my childhood and things that I've been through, they're really, really painful. And my heart's just been broken so many times through not only the actions of perpetrators, but also at my own hand through my own ignorance and unconsciousness. And so, Rhythmia for me was just like, those first 4 ceremonies were just seeing like, oh man, I've been through a lot of shit. I've just been so hurt in my life in so many ways. And that was the first opportunity I've had to really, really see. Now, I've looked at this stuff, man. I've written about it. I've done hypnotherapy. I've done EMDR. I've done 12-step work. I mean, there's no stone unturned in my past or my history when it comes to, digging up the pains of the past and how they're affecting me today. But in that experience at Rhythmia, it's just like, oh man, I really got to feel and see the gravity of many of those situations in my life. And in shining a light on them is where the healing took place. And that's the beauty of having the courage and the guidance from the people that hold ceremony and hold space for you. Hopefully it's done in a really conscious way with conscious people that have the right intentions and are doing things in a safe way and a loving way and are really carrying you. But for me, man, I mean, it's just, I would never take back those initial 4 nights at Rhythmia. So God bless all the people there and the work that they're doing. I have nothing but positive things to say about them. And again, you can look forward to another series of podcasts coming out about my Soltara experience. And again, the comparison between those 2 places. But man, Michael, for me, it's been awesome. If it's something you're curious about, do your due diligence and make sure that your heart's really in the right place. And if it is, man, pretty much guarantee you're not going to regret it. On that note, before I move on to the next question, I always think these questions are going to be answered in 5 minutes. And then I look at my timer here and I go, oh, that's 29 minutes. Great. I don't know, man. There's a lot to share. I have a lot of passion in my heart and experience in my mind. What was I going to say? Oh, I got too excited. Anyway, what was it? God, I felt like it was pretty good. Well, it went away, so it must not have been that important. At any rate, there will be content coming out about this, and there'll be more exploration for me in the coming future, and I will document as much of it as I can while keeping within the confines of whatever tradition I happen to be exploring. I would say I tend to be on the fringe of that somewhat, but it's kind of my job. It's one of the exciting things about my life is I get to go have really crazy experiences and report on them. So there we go. Maybe whatever I was about to say will pop back into my reality at some point. It is 11:10 p.m. here, so I'm kind of running on fumes at this point. All right, so next question is, Evan wants to know things you can do to improve air quality in your home due to living in LA. Oh man, this is a really important one, and one that I think is overlooked quite a bit for us in the in the health scene and people like this. Everyone wants to know what the right diet is, and I'm like, how about the right diet for your lungs? It's called pure, clean air. I often look at this concept of being paleo, which to me makes a lot of sense. It's just looking back through time going, what happened with the advent of agriculture as human beings started to settle in one place? When that happened, when we had the ability to cultivate food, we became sedentary. Then we had to form military forces to keep other tribal humans from taking our food. There came the ownership of land. There came the ownership of animals. There came the ownership of other human beings in the form of slavery. There came taking a wife or many wives to force to work on your little farm. All kinds of weird shit happened when we figured out, oh, we can just till the land and tear everything that's naturally growing here out. Then we don't have to go travel around in roving tribes and find sustenance. When that happened, we moved indoors eventually, of course, as we figured out how to build structures. And then some time ago, we came up with electricity. And when we did that, shit really went crazy because the human body is not meant to experience electricity in close proximity. We also put ourselves behind glass. So when I think about this idea of paleo, most people approach paleo as what you eat. So you don't eat post-agricultural foods or processed foods. So essentially you're eating plants and animals. Although I guess you could do like a non-animal, like a vegan paleo thing. You could. I personally would starve. I just can't get full eating plants. That's just me. I've tried it. So those of you that are like, you haven't done it right. No, I did. 10 years I was vegetarian. I'm good. I've been there, done that. That's just, my trip. I feel much better eating the way I eat. But anyway, back to the point at hand, to the air. I'm into paleo air. You know what I'm saying? And that's impossible to do, of course, because we can't go back in time pre-industrial revolution. I would need a time machine to have true paleo air. But I'm all about like paleo air, paleo lighting in your house, paleo energetics, meaning eliminating the EMF as much as possible, all of those things, non-native blue light, all of the things that came as we, quote, end quotes, became civilized, which to me really means we digressed, we regressed, we've devolved because we've domesticated ourselves and put ourselves in human zoos and prisons, essentially, that we call houses, offices, hospitals, schools, libraries. Every building, every car that you see is our downfall. And a lot of that has to do with the indoor air, additionally, the outdoor air. Now, when it comes to outdoor air, there's not a lot you can do. We can pray that this administration, in the United States at least, continues to curtail the use of geoengineering, aerosol spraying that happens in the sky. There's a word that people use for it. If you use this word, people think you're a crazy conspiracy theorist because they apparently don't have eyes and they can't look up in the sky and see that what's being sprayed in the sky is not normal plane behavior. That's right, folks. I'm talking about chemtrails. And I give zero shits for anyone that thinks that I'm a conspiracy theorist because I happen to know that geoengineering is a real thing. I mean, you have on tape now the former head of the CIA talking about that. I mean, it's anyone that refutes the idea that planes are spraying metal particulate or various chemicals into the atmosphere for whatever reason, be it malevolent or benevolent, it's happening. And it's been happening since the early 90s, at least. That's when I started seeing it. Considering the fact that I grew up in the 70s, I was born in 1970, October 29th. I'm a double Scorpio, for those of you that are into such things. I remember being a little kid just laying in the grass and looking up in the sky, and you would see planes go over, and they would have a little trail behind them that would quickly dissipate. And that's called a contrail. It has to do with condensation in the atmosphere and something about the heat coming out of the engines, blah, blah. It kind of makes steam, right? And those skywriting planes, that kind of stuff. Then I guess for me, it was around the mid-90s in LA, I started looking up in the sky and being like, what the hell is that? There's like these tic-tac-toe patterns, and these planes are flying in really weird formation that have nothing to do with Los Angeles International Airport. They are going like from the valley to downtown, from Palos Verdes back up to the valley, like over to Pasadena. I mean, I'm looking up in the sky going, I know my directions. Like there's no airports anywhere that they're going. And you see them crisscrossing, going back and forth over the sky all day long until what was formerly a completely clear, crystal clear blue sky day is now filled with fake clouds and this cloud cover. And so that is something known as geoengineering, folks. It's a real thing. It's going on. If you are not intelligent enough to acknowledge that that's not normal, please stop listening to my podcast right now. Literally delete it from your app because you're dumb. I'm sorry. Like it's just, I have no room for people that are that idiotic. When all you have to do is just like Google geoengineering and you see government officials from all over the world admitting that this is what's going on. Even to the point where now you'll see stuff on mainstream, complete fake news that will say, oh, we're, because of global warming and climate change, we're considering this program where we're going to spray metal articulate, aluminum aerosols, et cetera, into the atmosphere in an effort to reduce the heat on the surface of the earth being created by the sun. In other words, like putting sort of a curtain or shield between the surface of the earth and the sun. And so I hear things like that. I'm like, okay, so you're admitting it, but you're acting like it's not been going on for the past 25 years that I've been watching it almost every day. So back to the outdoor air pollution. If you want to learn more about geoengineering, there's a man called Dane Wigington, and he has a site called geoengineeringwatch.com. I've spoken with him on the phone about being on the show, and we were going to do it. Because he's when I interview someone on a topic, I want like the guy or the lady. Like I want the top person if I can, like the foremost expert on any particular topic. And I would say when it comes to geoengineering, he's the top guy, if not one of them. He's devoted his whole life to exposing these programs. And I mean, his knowledge of this stuff it gets scary because, the information he's privy to is much more than your average person like you or I. And in my phone call to him, I was like, how can I make this related to health? So it fits within the context of the Lifestylist podcast because it gets into really deep conspiratorial stuff that's actually terrifying because the metal particulate in the air, for example, makes the air conductive, and it makes it especially conductive to the frequencies generated by 5G technology, which is a whole other thing I'm not even going to get into. Point being, when you're talking about, Evan, improving the air quality, son, this geoengineering is the main concern for me. So when I'm outside, I mean, I don't know, I'm not quite tinfoil hat enough to walk around with a mask, although with this coronavirus thing, who knows? It's probably much hype like all of the other deadly viruses that were supposed to kill us in the past 20 years and didn't. But God bless the people that have perished or that are sick. Not to make light of that, of course. But when you're outside, it just is what it is. So I did an episode a couple weeks ago about biohacking your car. Maybe I forget the episode number, but I have a great air purifier in my car. It's kind of it's a battle between like getting natural light in the car and having the sunroof cracks so that I get some real unfiltered non-blue light in the car, but also clean the air. But when they're spraying the chemtrails, son, let me tell you, it's gnarly, and especially if you're in a major city, because then you have the pollution that's just here from all of the fireplaces and stoves and restaurants and everything that's burning something or just putting off gas. I mean, even all the gas heating in all of the homes that's putting off exhaust. I mean, it's insane. And all of the brake pad dust from the cars and the emissions from the cars. And it's just gnarly. You add to that a layer of God knows what is in these chemtrails, and you're pretty much screwed. So it's just like, well, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do to control that. I have to say, though, this is going to trigger a bunch of people probably, especially those listeners of the show that are, watching fake news and are really, really in a Stockholm syndrome about the 2016 election. But I'm not going to get into politics and all of that. But as they pertain to our health and the environment, sometimes it's worth mentioning. There's like two interesting things. Mr. T, as I call him, because if you say the full word, some people melt down and have a full psychotic break, as observed on the news on that election night. Sad and funny as it was for me. But one thing that I did notice is the minute Mr. T took office, the chemtrails went away in LA for like 6 months. And I'm like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, or was it Casino? Maybe it's Goodfellas. And the black helicopters are chasing him around. He's high on coke and like he's all freaked out and paranoid. That's me with chemtrails. Like when I go outside every day, I just can't help it. I look up, I'm like, are they spraying today? Are they spraying? And there's nothing I can do about it. I'm powerless. I just have to accept it. But it's still really weird to know that we're being sprayed like bugs. I'm just not into it. When Homeboy got elected, they stopped for like 6 months. And then I was like, I wonder if there's any correlation there. And for me, one of my big critiques of this administration would be not great on the environment. I think there's some policies that are good, personally. I'm leaving personalities aside. I'm just talking about straight policy. There has been some good, and I will acknowledge that. But the environmental issues, I think because they pertain to the economy and business and production in the United States, et cetera, that a lot of the environmental concerns have been overlooked for the economy, right? And so I'm not a fan of that. But I thought perhaps since Mr. T is so fiscally motivated that maybe he killed the chemtrail program, because that's got to be expensive. I don't know who's funding that shit. If it's like a UN thing or an EU thing or a NATO thing, because I noticed too, traveling years ago, I don't know if this is still true, but if I visited any non-NATO countries, they wouldn't spray. It's really interesting. I don't know if Costa Rica is NATO, but they don't seem to spray chemtrails there, which is weird. So maybe I should just move to Costa Rica and do ayahuasca all the time in a chemtrail-free sky. But I thought perhaps that he cut the budget on the chemtrails and they would stop. But then they started again, and they've come and gone many times since then. So I don't know if that was the case, but they have definitely diminished, at least in Los Angeles, from where they used to be. The former administration for 8 years, it was just fucking nonstop. I mean, it was out of control. No one was admitting it. And we were all down here breathing God knows what. So I just feel it's important to talk about these issues. And again, I will do a show on chemtrails. I don't care. I can get banned from the whole internet. You just go ahead, do whatever you got to do. Like I'm going to speak my truth, like I did about vaccines. When I did the episode, don't have the number in front of me, but I interviewed Del Bigtree, and it wasn't an anti-vax show. It was a vax awareness show and a pro-safety testing show. Let's just clarify that. But you can now be banned, which goes into one of the next questions. So I'm just going to put it out there. The geoengineering is happening. And to me, that's the main concern with our air, because in Paleolithic times, folks, no planes were spraying metal particulate in the air. And if you look at the correlation between the rise in Alzheimer's, dementia, and things that are directly related to the ingestion of aluminum, it's pretty obvious if you look at the timeline. So I'll just leave it at that. So what can you do about it is what Evan wants to know now that I've laid out the problem. Well, outdoor air, not much you can really do unless you want to wear a mask, okay? So if you're outside, you're going to get hammered. And if you're in a city, you're going to get really hammered, which is why I advise everyone in the world to move out of the goddamn city you live in pronto. And I'm working on doing that myself. I know I always talk about it on the show. After 30 years of being, tethered to this city and all of its glory, it is difficult to get out. I'll just say that. But something will give at some point, and I'll make my way, and you'll hear all about it because the studio will be somewhere else and I'll be in the woods living my dream life. Until then, I'm here and I got to clean the air inside my house. So the number one thing I recommend is getting hella plants inside your home. There's a lot of plants that are known. There's been studies done by NASA that, they'd send, I don't even know if space travel is necessarily real, but anyway, they claim it is. I'm talking about the moon landings and stuff. You conspiracy theorists know what I'm saying. If you're going to go there with the chemtrails, then we got to look at the moon landings, man. Like there's a lot of shenanigans going on with some of that stuff. So who knows? But NASA has definitely studied plants and used plants and also used a lot of PEMF and all kinds of cool things also in the Russian space program as well, to make our space travelers safer, including the air. And so some of the plants that you can look into are bamboo palm, Chinese evergreen, dragon tree, peace lily, spider plants, corn plants. If you just Google like best air cleaning plants, you'll find a list like that one and many more. I have a lot of plants in my house. I'm now 49. I'm just at the point in my life where I tend to not kill that many plants. Like I have quite a few that are around for a while. I think what kills them, honestly, is the chlorinated water. If you put unfiltered water on your plants, this is just a guess, I could be wrong, that you're killing the microbiome in the soil that creates the nutrients that feed the plant. And so even if I really am diligent about taking care of my plants, some of them just eventually just croak anyway. And I'm like, I know they're getting enough light, I'm watering them correctly, and they're just toast. But figure it out, get a green thumb, fill your damn house with plants. The next one would be air filtration. If you own a home, you can get a massive HEPA type filter put on your, what do you call that? Temperature control system, your AC, heating unit, all that. I don't know the brands and stuff. Ben Greenfield is a guy I would look at when it comes to the home air filtration. I think he's got a good system on his home from what he was telling me. I forget the name of it, but me personally, I've been aware of indoor health or indoor air quality toxicity for a long, long time. My dad, who's like the OG biohacker, shout out to Alan Story. What's up, Alan? I don't think he listens to my show anymore because I swear too much. And trust me, my dad's like, he's no prude, but he's gotten classier in his age and wisdom. So sometimes he's like, yeah, your show's great, but you have to use so many swear words. I'm like, fucking hey, Dad. I mean, I got to express myself. You know what I'm saying? So my dad turned me on to the Austin Air HealthMate filters ages ago because he became aware of off-gassing coming from everything in your house, all of the paint, all the plastics that your computers and speakers and TVs and lamps and power cords and, this little power strips and anything in your house that's made out of essentially crude oil, originally plastic, is going to off-gas, and the dyes and the formaldehyde in the furniture and the glue that keeps your furniture together when it's not, made right with nails and such. Carpeting, the padding under your carpeting. I mean, it's just madness, not to mention all of the cleaning products that many people still use that are totally toxic. So there are a lot of studies you can find online that will indicate just how toxic indoor air is. So I've been using the Austin Air HealthMates for a long, long time. I have 2 of them in my house now. Maybe that's why I'm sniffly. I probably need one in the office here. Those are good, but they only take out particulate. In other words, they don't do anything for mold, fungus. What are the other things? Bacteria, all of those tiny, tiny little critters that you don't want in your air either. And what I will do for that in the near future, based on my research, is I'm going to get a molecule air filter because it uses a different technology that cleans the air much more thoroughly and also gets the funk out of the air, whereas your hepatite type filters like the Austin Air HealthMate don't do. And so the molecule, based on all of my research, and I've looked into this a lot, tends to be the best. And that's why I sell that particular one. Well, I don't sell it. I just link to it as an affiliate at lukestory.com/store. And you should know as a listener to this podcast that just about everything I mention on a regular basis, like the things that I use and I personally believe in, like the blue blocking glasses I'm wearing right now, for those of you watching the YouTube video, you see them. I don't just shill this shit. I actually use it. But you can find all these things at lukestory.com/store. I don't even think I have the Austin Air on there because I think the molecule's better. They're just expensive, and I haven't been willing to throw out the, I think, $700 or $800 for one of these puppies. But they're beautiful looking. They actually don't look heinous and are meant to be quite effective. Some other brands that I've looked into that are competitors and might be, of interest to you would be the Air Oasis, airoasis.com. There's another one called iqair.com. And then the one that I have downstairs in my living room is a heater. It's one of those little Dyson heaters, and it claims to clean the air. And it has a thing on your phone. You open the app, and it tells you your air quality. And because I live in an old house and I live in Los Angeles, every time I turn mine on, it's like yellow, poor. So I don't know how much that does. But one thing I do not like about the Dyson is that it transmits and receives Wi-Fi. And I haven't figured out how to turn that off. It's nice because I can just walk downstairs and use the app to turn it on and off, but I'm certainly paying the price in more RF radio frequencies rolling around the house, which sucks. And all of the Sonos speakers and all these kind of things. But because I'm leasing, I haven't gotten that hardcore. As soon as I buy a place, which will be in the very near future, I'm going to hardwire the whole goddamn house and try to avoid Wi-Fi completely if possible. The air in your home needs to be cleaned if you want to be fully healthy. And I would recommend definitely, if you have kids, I always say, put on your own oxygen mask first. Anyone that's trained to be an EMT knows you always save yourself. Not that I did, but I have friends that have. You always save yourself, then save others. But man, when it comes to EMF and air quality and things like that, if I had a kid, I would definitely be taking care of their room and getting that dialed in. Just because when they're tiny little tots, they're so much more susceptible to environmental stressors, etc. But I definitely recommend getting plants in your house. Get a shit ton of them. That's a clinical term for a lot. And definitely get some air filtration going on. If you own the home, again, you could do a whole house filter to get the big dust coming in, get all the chemtrails out and all that stuff. And then do something like the molecule in the various rooms that you have. They have a little mini molecule now for smaller rooms, which is good. Maybe I should get one of those here on my desk in the studio. I think that'd be a good idea. Be a good entry point because they're considerably cheaper. But I would definitely recommend taking care of the air in the house. And again, if you live in a city, get out and I'll be right behind you. Next question comes from Karen, and I alluded to this one before when I was talking about being censored for bringing light to such issues as vaccinations and geoengineering and the like. Karen says, serious question, Luke. When, not if, Facebook joins in on the great health purge and shuts this page down, of course, she's referring to the wonderful Lifestylist Podcast Facebook group, what is an alternative place we can all gather for our discussions? Man, Karen, that's very insightful. And that is a great question and one that I've pondered. And to be honest, as I always say, I'm not a huge user of Facebook or even fan in general, particularly due to their Orwellian level of censorship that it's just mind-boggling. Like, I want to just boycott them, but am I going to delete Instagram? Like, I'm totally addicted to Instagram. Their flicker rate and their dopamine addictive algorithms and everything that's built into that tech. I literally am addicted to it. So I don't know. What am I going to do? I got to go to Instagram rehab or something. So it's one of those things like I'm just dancing with the devil and I'm playing the game of the big tech stuff. But there are, of course, alternatives coming out. You have people like Jordan Peterson who are mislabeled as like white supremacists and shit, which is just so ridiculous. But some of these things are coming to light. So people are going, all right, screw Patreon. You're going to take down my page because you don't agree with me politically or because I'm going to talk about health issues or anything else. They're just making their own platform. So I'm very hopeful that free thinkers and patriots and people that are into personal freedom and sovereignty are going to take it upon themselves and come up with alternative platforms where people can speak freely and support one another and gather, and this is a huge issue. And that's another thing I would say, in addition to some of the loosening of environmental regulations for the sake of the economy that this administration has really screwed the pooch on, is like the censorship thing, man. No one's doing anything about it, and it's just getting worse and worse. And as hopeful as I am on one end that as a result of so many people being purged from social media because of their views that aren't in alignment with the backers and owners of big tech, such as big pharma, et cetera, or certain political parties and whatnot, that I'm hopeful that people are going to build new platforms. And I myself made the Facebook group in a way to really centralize people so that they're there on some platform, the listeners of the show and the community that I like to build and the people I like to hang out with, whether virtually or in person, so that then when that happens, we can find a way to move those discussions to another platform kind of as a group, or I build my own portal on my site where that happens, or, the retreats that I'm planning and things like that. So I'm hopeful about that, but it's also just terrifying and completely shocking that the censorship at Facebook, Twitter, Apple, YouTube, Google, even Instagram, just the fact they're shutting down free speech. And, first what they do is like how this goes, if you look throughout history, I mean, you go back to Nazi Germany or any of these really totalitarian regimes that started burning books and jailing the intellectuals and free thinkers and critics of the establishment, et cetera. They always start with the most radical characters and then work their way down. And what they've done this time is they started with Alex Jones. And for whatever you think of Alex Jones, I was into Alex Jones way back from 9/11. Okay. So like, I don't, you might stop listening to the show because I say that, but, I'm just going to leave it at that. So I'm probably going to get banned from the internet from just saying like, I don't hate Alex Jones. Okay. He's got some out there stuff and, his personality is what it is. But you got to admit, if you've been following culture for a while, homeboy called a lot of shit. Epstein, I could go on and on, all the things that dude uncovered that the establishment, the powers that be did not want to be uncovered. Let's put it that way. And so I knew, man, as soon as they took him down, because they could, what they do is they lie about someone. So they say, oh, Alex Jones said this about Sandy Hook and this and that. And they take things out of context. They actually edit audio, make it say things that weren't said. And then they demonize someone, but they shut them down on all the platforms so they can't defend themselves because they have no voice anymore because they've been deplatformed. So when that happened, I was like, okay, here we go. And no one really stuck up for the guy. And so you have this domino effect. So you have an Alex Jones and even people that are, somewhat right-leaning or libertarian would say, whatever, just Alex Jones. He's crazy. He's that guy that screams and has the red face and is a conspiracy theorist. Like, whatever, take him down. And not realizing, well, next they're coming for Peterson. They're coming for Joe Rogan. They're coming for your ass if you have a platform and you don't toe the line, the corporate line, the big pharma line, the political line. And so it's terrifying to me as someone who makes my living, my livelihood, and also my passion and my life's purpose from sharing information that is perhaps not widely reported by mainstream media outlets. And we're in a really beautiful, expansive time in history because A guy like me with a freaking internet connection and a microphone can have my own radio station and essentially do whatever the fuck I want up until the point when they deplatformed Alex Jones. Now, just by me talking about him and posting this to Facebook, the algorithm could pick up that I just said the AJ word. And because I'm not going, I hate him, I can be deplatformed. That's the reality of Facebook right now. If you do a post that's positive about that particular person, you will get banned. Well, you have a risk of getting banned and having your Facebook account removed because you didn't spread hate about someone like that. And so, again, just zooming out, I don't give a shit like if anyone likes Alex Jones or not. I don't care if the guy is a hate monger or whatever. I don't even know what they say about him because I don't watch fake news. But even if that was true, that person, like me and you listening, have a right to say what we want to say. And so if you believe in free speech, then you have to allow hate speech. You have to allow bullshit. You have to allow conspiracy theory. You have to allow it all. There's no picking and choosing with what you think is free speech. Now, threatening someone, with violence or something like that, I mean, then you're breaking the law. There's laws against that sort of thing. But saying, I believe there's chemtrails, or I think that we should do more testing on vaccines. They're making people sick. They're not safe. The CDC is corrupt. They lied about this. They lied about that. I mean, if we're not allowed to share information like that, we are screwed, folks. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is the downfall of so many civilizations. As book burning starts with the town kook, and next thing you know, they're burning all the books. And I'm using that kind of as a symbolism there of the book burning, but the equivalent of that would be kicking me off Twitter because I say something that the establishment doesn't like. I'm not towing the company line per se, or I have someone on my podcast that's controversial. And so I don't know what we can do about this except just keep sharing the fact that it's happening and expressing our discontent for it. And hopefully people that are involved in legislation and lawmaking become aware of these things and do something to stick up for the little guys that get banned, because they're coming for you next. They might start with someone who's leans more right or conservative, and everyone on the other side of the aisle is like, oh yeah, screw them. We don't want to hear them anyway. Well, guess what? They're coming for you next. Sorry. And that's just how it always goes if you look at it historically. Now, I am definitely no expert on world history, politics, things of that nature, but I do have a fundamental understanding of what's happened historically when people's voices are shut down. And I also clearly understand that we have something called the Constitution here, and that's what is one of the main things that has propelled not only the United States for being the great country that it is, but also so many free societies in the Western world. And I really believe in that. I believe in the freedom of sharing ideas and opinions, whether I like them or not. There's a lot of people online that I think are full of shit, and I can't stand them. I think they're toxic. I think they're horrible. I think they're liars. I don't like their message. I don't like what they believe in. But I absolutely defend their right to speak their mind. And so, I don't know, that's just a huge rant because it's a really triggering issue for me, because I just don't like totalitarianism. I don't like this Orwellian, politically correct, crazy world that we're now entering into. It's madness, and it's going to end. It's not going to end well if someone doesn't do something. So I'm doing my little part here to just spread awareness about it. And, I could regret even touching on some of these topics later, but it is what it is. It's like I'll be able to sleep tonight going, you know what? I didn't fold in fear of repercussions or people to stop listening to my show or report me to one of the social media police because I mentioned a certain person's name or something. I mean, it's just like, I can't do that. I'll find another way to get my message out if I get shut down. And that said, I also do avoid some topics and some guests because they're just too inflammatory, and I can't risk having my whole thing shut down. So, I mean, just look at what happened to Joe Rogan, man. I think he just said he likes Bernie Sanders, and this whole thing happened. It's like, what is going on here? It's just crazy. It's craziness. It's just nuts. So keep valuing your free speech. And for those of you that are in the tech world, man, there is such a hungry populace that wants platforms that we can all use. Because sometimes what happens is like someone will make a platform, but then no one uses it, or it gets taken over by trolls that go to, let's just say people on the left were being censored, which is not the case, but let's just say they were. So then they would go start their own thing, but then all the people in opposition, maybe on the far right, would then come and infiltrate their platform and ruin it with like bots and just a bunch of trolling, So it's like, I don't know what the successful way to do it is, because it takes money, to build platforms and to promote them and keep them going. And someone has to run them and someone has to kind of monitor them. And it's a complex issue, but for the time being, I'm just very grateful that I've been able to not be too controversial and have my little world and health and spirituality, and not really cover too many of the issues that are bound to get me censored or taken off the platforms. Like if my show was deleted from iTunes, like Alex Jones' podcast was, God, that would just suck. So I don't know what I can do to prevent that, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and, try to keep my head down and not be too crazy with the stuff that I talk about or the guests that I have on. But man, if we don't protect the people that we don't agree with, pretty soon there'll be no protection for us. So that's my rant on that. And I will say, as strange as things are in closing, that I truly believe that love is more powerful than hate, and that truth is more powerful than falsehood, and that good is more powerful than evil, and that people like you listening to this, truth seekers, people like me that are out to better the world in our own unique way, will prevail. And that by and large, over time, the consciousness of humanity tends to elevate, and it gets higher and higher and higher through its different dips, and it weaves and wanes. And eventually we come out, I think, more conscious and more awake than we were before. And so I can only hold hope that will continue to be the case, but that is in part dependent on those of us that value our personal freedom and our basic fundamental human rights to at least stand up for ourselves. And in some cases, if you're so qualified and situated, to stand up for others that have been subjugated by the powers that be and silenced and shut down. So I'm just going to say, free Alex Jones, because he's you pretty soon, whether you like it or not, if you're a content creator. So all you cowards out there that didn't stand up for the guy, I have no respect for you. Okay. Because a lot of people I know follow that dude's stuff, but then went silent when he got deplatformed. And if you think about how scary this, I'm just going to say this, okay? When you observed that happen, see all big tech in a concerted effort within a 24-hour period, all ban that dude. I'm talking about YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, iTunes, Google. Well, I guess Google, they didn't they didn't remove his site from the internet, because the internet is not Google, it's part of the internet. But all those platforms all at once in a concerted effort just went poof, you're gone. And then in some cases, in that particular gentleman's case and some others that I've caught wind of, their PayPal got shut down. Then their banking, the online payment gateways that they use to monetize their website got shut down because of a concerted effort from big corporations and also from citizens that in an evil way rally against someone and troll them and report them, to the point where those companies then are feeling the social pressure to deplatform or demonetize someone. But you think it's scary to get kicked off Twitter? What if you have a website and Chase comes to you and says, we don't like your speech and we're taking away your ability to get paid on the internet. You can't take credit cards anymore, your credit card processors and things like that. That's what happened to that dude. That's nar, where you're not allowed to bank because someone doesn't like the words that you use or your opinion, or that you look into social events and question the official narrative about them. Can you imagine? If someone says, hey, like me, I'm someone that thinks the official story of something like 9/11 is missing facts and is covering up facts and is not only that, but stating untruths. I don't know what happened, but whatever we were told happened is not what happened. I mean, a 5-year-old could sit and make a case for that. It's just so obvious at this point, especially all these years later. So say I go, hey, you guys, let's really look into what happened. Like what happened with Building 7 that just collapsed on itself in a controlled demolition fashion with no planes hitting it. Like, what's up with that? Then Chase can go, that's hate speech, or you're a conspiracy theorist. We're taking away your ability to get paid. Like, dude, I don't know. That's terrifying to me. So there you go. Totally random lifestylist podcast. Yeah. Again, when I talk about this shit, then I click stop on recording and I go, Luke, oh my God, what have you done? And then I realize I'm not that important. It doesn't really matter. This is just another silly podcast episode that's just going to disappear into the ethers and, you'll never hear about it again. Hopefully. Unless you use hate speech. They'll come back and get you. But I don't hate anyone except the people doing the censoring at the top of the Illuminati pyramid. You guys can suck it. Okay, Carlos asks, it was suggested to me by my doctor to look into completely different direction here, lighten things up. It was suggested to me by my doctor to look into riboflavin for my tension headaches. And then he used a little headache emoji. Oh, Carlos, sorry, dude. With so many brands out there, what brand do you recommend and trust? # thank you all. Now, I'm sure some of our other users gave homie some great advice on not only riboflavin, but headaches in general. What I would like to say about riboflavin to start with is I have no clue what that shit even is. I've seen the word and I'm completely unqualified to speak on it. However, a guy that I know named Chris Masterjohn talks a lot about it on his podcast. So definitely check that out. That's Chris Masterjohn. He's a PhD, does a lot of content about supplementation and health, et cetera. Great guy, lives in New York. He's going to be on the show eventually. I don't like to record remotely unless I'm forced to at gunpoint. And so until we're both in the same city, he's not on this show. But he has a great podcast where he does deep dives into very nuanced topics. Like he'll do a whole show on riboflavin. So go listen to that. And in terms of supplement brands, I would like to throw a bit of my experience out on this one. And that is, I pretty much go to the brand Quicksilver Scientific. If you've been to the master market, lukestory.com/store, you've seen tons of their products. I've interviewed their formulator and founder, Dr. Chris Shade, on the show, another PhD, a brilliant guy. And they have not only just a lot of integrity in terms of the quality of their products, but their delivery system, which is a nano-emulsified or liposomal delivery system, is just unparalleled. In other words, when you take supplements by Quicksilver, they go directly into your bloodstream via the capillaries in your mouth. It's called a sublingual, right? So you squirt these little nutrients under your tongue, and it's about as close as you can get to getting an IV, whereas other supplement brands that make pills that you swallow are subject to the ability of your digestive system to process those nutrients. And so there's a lot of pee and excrement that is full of vitamins when you take the pills. I'm kind of losing my ability to talk at this point. It's like midnight here. But anyway, I like Quicksilver Scientific because of the absorption. That's what I'm getting at right now. Unfortunately, I don't think Quicksilver makes a riboflavin, if that is in fact the cure for Carlos's ails there. But my second choice would be a company called Thorne, THORNE, and they make what I would say is like a clinical or pharmaceutical grade supplement line. And in most cases, if I can't find something on Quicksilver, because they don't make every supplement, they do what they do and they do it well. But if I had to go buy something like riboflavin, I would pick the Thorn one. And I did a little research actually for Carlos here, and I poked around, and I thought Thorn would probably be the one that I would pick. And based on the studying that I did on their particular product, that would be the one I would use. Now, whether or not it's going to fix your headache, I don't know. So the recommendation there for those brands, I say for a reason, because with supplement companies, they're not regulated, right? And so as a result, many of them sell just useless pills and powders that not only don't work, but also in many, if not most cases, also contain excipients, fillers, binders, and other crap that you just don't want in your body. So one of the first things I do as a general practice when I am looking for a particular supplement, like let's say I decided I wanted to take riboflavin, first thing I'll do usually is go on Amazon and search there. I'll look for the highest rated and the most expensive version of riboflavin, and then I'll click on the pictures and immediately zoom into the ingredient deck, and I'll look for all of those excipients, fillers, binders, etc., and see if those are there. And if those are present, that tells me that that brand kind of sucks, because they're trying to cut corners and save money during the manufacturing process, because especially when it comes to encapsulating nutrients into a pill, it's much more expensive and slow to just put the goodies in there without using the fillers and binders, et cetera. Essentially, there's things that they use when they encapsulate things that kind of lubricate the caps and make them faster and easier to be filled by the machinery that does so. And so companies, to me, that have integrity will not only not have those added crappy things in them, they usually tell you like, hey, we're awesome because we don't use any of that stuff. So that's what I'm looking for. And I think most of the supplements that I link to on my site are going to fit in the former category, meaning that they're clean, they're useful and potent. If you find something on my site that has like an excipient, like they'll use magnesium stearate or vegetable stearate and these different things, I guarantee you the only reason that's on my site is just because there's no product available that doesn't have it in there, and I want that product. But in most cases, that's kind of how I vet these companies. So back to the headaches, Carlos. Speaking of headaches, I'm getting one from sitting here and it's being seated for so long and talking so much. It's so much different when you interview someone, you know, because you get to take a breath and kind of chill while they're talking when you ask the question. But for headaches, here's what I would do, my friend. I would first go to the root cause. And in my opinion, the root cause to many headaches is constipation. And this is not a sexy topic. We don't like to talk about our poops, our doo-doo, but I do. I love it. I love talking about the poop. When you're not regular, you got to think about this. All of the toxins that you're taking in your diet that are dumped into your colon and then come out in that soil that you create, all of the toxins that your body's trying to get rid of in that fecal matter get reabsorbed back into your bloodstream in your colon. You know, you got to understand your colon is just like the inside of your mouth or the inside of your vagina. If you have one of those, it's mucous membrane with very accessible capillaries. And so like when you take the liposomal Quicksilver Scientific supplements under your tongue, that's the reason it soaks in so readily, is the capillaries are so close to the surface of the skin. It's very thin skin. It just absorbs right into your bloodstream. So think about if you have an impacted colon. I know this is gross, guys, but it's just the fact. Hopefully I gross you out enough to go get a colonic and like get your digestion and your gut fixed. But if you're, if you got a full house down there, you're in bad shape, son, because what's happening is all of those toxins that you're taking in, and even if you eat organic and everything, I mean, it's just in our food supply, it's in our environment. You just can't help eating poison. There's just poison everywhere, right? Not to be paranoid, it's just a fact. So all that poison is then going back into your bloodstream, just like you did a liposomal poison squirt of supplement in your mouth. So to me, the colon health and getting your digestion right is number one when it comes to headaches. Because I know in my past experience and earlier in life, I had a lot of digestive issues and still do. It's probably one of the things I'm working on the most, although constipation is not really an issue as it used to be, primarily when I was a vegetarian because I ate so many grains and things like that, because I didn't want to eat meat. The weird thing about, anyway, like people on the carnivore diet have better digestion than most plant-based people I know. This is weird. And I'm not like necessarily a proponent of the carnivore diet. I tried it and it was just too inconvenient. I'm not opposed to the idea of it because I don't particularly enjoy eating most plants, but the digestion. But I had a lot of problems before with constipation back in the day, especially when I came off of opiates when I was 26 after a good 6-year daily consistent use. My digestive system just kind of shut down and I had headaches all the time. And then as I started to get into colonics, which were the thing kind of in the late 90s, people were really into alleviating constipation and getting your digestion working. And everyone was taking, supplemental laxatives, herbs and whatnot that would keep you regular. And I had to do that for years before I started just kind of eating right and started eating meat again and, ghee and bone broth and getting really highly nutritious animal products and all that back into my diet and healing the gut and eliminating, for the most part, grains and gluten and whatnot. So I don't really have the constipation thing, but man, if I ever have a headache, that's the first thing I check for. I'm like, did I go to the bathroom today? Nope. God damn it. There's the headache. So that's number one. Is get the pipes cleaned out, do some colonics. And what I would do personally if I was getting a lot of headaches is I would do a series of at least 3, if not more, gravity-fed colonics in 1 week, and then really work on healing the gut and avoiding inflammatory foods, which are typically grains, processed foods. Some people are very sensitive to nightshades, things like tomatoes, etc., eggplant, that kind of stuff. I think I kind of forget to recommend this, but years ago, Dave Asprey made this infographic called The Bulletproof Diet. And then he did a book called The Bulletproof Diet, but there's an infographic you can download online. And I got to say, man, that's like the most accurate, functional way of eating. I'm not a big diet guy. I don't think there's like a right diet for any one person. There's different diets that work for different people at different times. I feel best, honestly, like if I just eat fish and meat, like I feel good. I start eating other stuff, I feel weird, and so does my digestion. The Bulletproof Diet will warn you of foods that are going to wreck your digestion, such as nightshades and things like that. And what I like about that particular approach to eating is it's not like a duality of right, wrong, good, bad, black, white. It's on a spectrum. So at the top of his infographic are the foods that are optimal and the least inflammatory, the least allergenic, and down to the bottom, which are kind of in the red zone of foods that are likely to wreck you. And so you can kind of find yourself somewhere in the middle, and I find that's a much easier food plan to follow. I used to have it on my refrigerator for a couple of years, so shout out to Dave for putting that together. It was very useful in the beginning of my journey. And now I just kind of intuitively know what foods my body likes and doesn't like. And I've done a lot of other testing, like the Viome test and all sorts of different things to support what I intuitively feel is right for me. So start pooping more, Carlos, if you're not doing that. And while you're at it, get yourself a squatty potty so that your anatomy is so situated to help facilitate healthy bowel movements, because we have evolved to squat while we release the funk, not to sit there on a throne. Next, I would do functional medicine labs to look for other toxicity that could be contributing to these headaches. Heavy metals would be something for me, viral, fungal, bacterial infections, systemic infections, that kind of stuff. Epstein-Barr, all of these things that can cause a lot of inflammation and wreak havoc in your body. And the guesswork is just a waste of time. I just go straight to the labs. Like I found out years ago, I thought I was so healthy, but then I'd have these persistent kind of brain fog episodes and things, and got my labs done. And I was off the charts in lead. I don't know if I was like eating freaking paint off the wall in the 70s or what the hell happened, but I had just unbelievable amounts of lead in my body. And I went on a bunch of different detox protocols to get rid of it. And I did get the lead levels down quite a bit to sort of what would be considered a normal level for someone living today in a city. Next would be with the headaches, man. You got to look for the EMF exposure, not to be a broken record here. And the next question I'm going to wrap up with from Carrie is about EMFs. I'll try to just kind of rattle through this a little bit faster because, whoa, shit, I realized this episode's going on for a while. But the EMF, so I'm just going to say this. Carlos, man, make sure that you've got your Wi-Fi off at night. If you can, just take the Wi-Fi out of your house and just put Ethernet cables everywhere. That's what I did in my last apartment. I haven't done it here because I didn't think I was going to be here that long. Never, ever, ever use wireless earbud, Bluetooth headphones of any kind. You are insane. Not just Carlos. I'm not bitching at Carlos. I'm bitching at everyone. You are insane if you use anything Bluetooth on your head. I got invited to some sort of breathwork, quasi-psychedelic trippy party a few months ago, and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. You know, it's like this, they play these crazy beats, and I don't know. I can't explain what it was. It was just some crazy hippie Burning Man shit. Looked cool, you know, black light poster kind of vibes. So I looked at the invite and I was almost signing up, and then I saw everyone in the photos had these like glowing headphones on, like the wireless headphones. And I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. It's a room full of 75 people with those Bluetooth headphones on. It's kind of like the silent disco thing, like that vibe, so that everyone's listening to music on headphones. And I uninvited myself because I'm literally not going to go somewhere and put Bluetooth on my head for 3 hours. There's no amount of money. I won't do that. There's enough damage being done just by living with the ambient radiation in the environment, whether it be in my house or having my phone nearby or driving my car around with all the cell towers. I mean, it's just nuts. And I'm particularly sensitive to EMFs, much more so than your average person. So Carlos and everyone, man, if you have headaches, I would look at the EMF, the Bluetooth headphones, using your cell phone. Again, you're insane if you put your phone up to your head. Like if you have a Defender Shield case, you could put your phone up to your head as long as you have the correct side of the case facing you. But I still wouldn't do that. The only time I would put a cell phone up to my head is with my Defender Shield case facing my head. But even then, it would have to be an emergency. Like I land in a really loud airport and I'm trying to talk to the Uber driver who refuses to text me. By the way, if you're an Uber driver and someone texts you, don't call them, text them back. I know it's unsafe when you're driving, but get over it. I would also check your building, your house, apartment for smart meters. Many times people are living and sleeping against a wall where on the other side, there's a bank of smart meters that are just absolutely wrecking you with radiation coming through the wall, et cetera. Or you might even have a neighbor that lives in the house next to you and they have a smart meter on the side of their house pointed right at your bedroom, sometimes, 10, 15, 20 feet away. I don't know if houses are 10 feet apart, but whatever regulations will allow. Smart meters are hella bad. And then also nearby cell towers. And I'm just going to say this one, man, I have personal experience. Many of you that listen to the show are really sick of this story, but I was living for 3 years unknowingly underneath 2 massive cell towers that were about 100 yards from my bed. And my friends, I had excruciating headaches almost every single morning. I got all my labs done. I was doing everything I just told you to do, and I could not figure out what the hell was wrong with me. My eyes went bad. I had vertigo. I was so dizzy, nauseous. It was a living hell. And that's right when I started this podcast is when I moved in there. And so the first couple of years of this podcast, I didn't talk about it a lot because I was trying to find a solution, but I was messed up, son. So, man, I would scan your neighborhood for cell towers, especially if you live in a 5G city. Those little towers are tiny. They're sneaky. They can put them right in front of your house and you're going to get your brain fried. So going back to the riboflavin, I mean, you could try that and you might have this tension headaches thing. I don't even know what that is, but I'm guessing it's constipation or something in your labs and your blood work you can find, or EMF exposure. Okay, Carrie has a question. She says, she lives in the UK. She's looking for a device to measure EMFs in her home. And she also has a Rayco system installed, which is this, like what looks really cool, this lighting system you can control, kind of program. And she has a Nest heating system. And she said, I suspect there's a lot of EMF flying around. You think, Carrie? Oh my God. Where do I even start with this? Because I want to make it brief and get us out of here because it's been a long episode. First off, I would never, ever personally use LED lighting in my home or anywhere for that matter. LED lights, most of them at least, flicker. And that means that your iris, the lens, no, is it the iris? No, the pupil. Yeah, the pupil is the pupil is like that aperture of a camera, right? And when lights flicker, if you can find these videos online, the pupil in your eye opens and closes constantly, trying to adjust to the flicker, just like it would if you were in a room and you kept turning the light on and off manually. Your eyes would keep adjusting. And so flicker is really bad for your brain, really bad for your eyes. It makes you really tired. And back to Carlos, can cause headaches as well. And LEDs and fluorescent bulbs, especially those little CFL curlicue bulbs that are in almost every hotel room. Every time I check in a hotel, I go remove all the light bulbs and put my own bulbs in. That's how psycho I am about the lights, or brilliant, as I would say, about the lights. But I do change them because that flicker is not only bad for your eyes and your brain and the blue light and all that, but those type of lights also produce an incredible amount of EMF. And specifically, fluorescent bulbs make an insane amount of dirty electricity. In fact, I have a little tiny fluorescent bulb in the stove fan hood dealio above my stove in the kitchen. And I was so proud of myself because I put some True Dark blue blocking, that's not tape. It's like these little films that you can get from truedark.com. I have them on my site also. And I killed the blue light on that little fluorescent bulb above the stove. And then I tested it with Brian Hoyer over here. And it produces an insane amount of EMF right at your head as you stand and cook food. So there you are, like, I'm eating organic. I'm awesome. And meanwhile, frying your brain with that thing like 6 inches from you. So not a fan of fluorescence, not a fan of LED. I'm so sorry, Carrie. You probably spent a fortune on the Rayco system. They look awesome. I looked into it. It's cool. You can control the lighting in your whole house with an app. It's dope, but you're getting flicker, you're getting blue light, you're getting EMF. If it runs on Wi-Fi, which it of course does, then it's like every light is a transmitter. So it's like having your house full of Wi-Fi routers. Not to freak you out or make you paranoid, but your question about like you want a device to measure the EMF, you don't need a device, hon, because your house is a cesspool of EMF. I'm sorry. Just you come to me, you're going to get the truth. That said, you might live long and prosper, think positive, have loving relationships, human connection, have good sex, drink lots of pure water, good food, listen to music, enjoy your friends, live your best life in your home, and you'll probably be fine. But you're asking me about the EMF, so I'm going to tell you. Sonos, Nest, the Dyson Air thing I told you about, all of the devices in your house that are smart, quote unquote. It's really funny they call them smart because they're so dumb when it comes to your health. I know myself, I'm lazy, just like all humans. And I did not hardwire my Sonos, and I tested them. And every Sonos speaker in my house, and there's a grip of them because it's fucking awesome to come home and just grab your phone and crank up whatever music you want off Spotify. Each one of those in my home produces almost as much RF, radio frequencies, as my actual router. It's just ridiculous. So, when I sleep, it all gets turned off. So at least when I sleep, I'm resting. But you don't need an EMF meter to tell you that. Anyone listening, your house is full of EMF if you have wireless stuff that runs on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You're trashing your life. But sometimes it's worth it to have awesome music. What? And I'll tell you what, if you're listening to the Lifestylist podcast using that type of technology, you're going to be protected because the vibration of the show is so high. Just kidding. That's what happens at 12:13 a.m. Next, Carrie, just don't bother with buying the gadgets, although I'm going to tell you which ones to get, and I have them on my site too. But just get a building biologist to come screen your home professionally. It takes about $20,000 to $30,000 worth of equipment to really screen a house correctly. And so if you want to go spend that money, go to school for it for 6 months, learn how to become a building biologist yourself, go for it. But it's a lot cheaper and easier just to hire a brainiac nerd who already knows how to do that shit to come into your house and tell you what's up. Saves a lot of time and money and a lot of worry, because sometimes, I mean, I'm kind of being a little hardcore with your Rayco system and your Nest and all that, but sometimes you have someone come in and they test and it's like not as bad as you thought it would be, or the areas of your house that you thought would be the worst aren't that nar. In fact, in my house here, when I had it tested, the office was actually pretty chill. Like where I'm sitting right now on my computer, there's really no radiation or anything. It's a really clean EMF environment here in the office, with the exception of my Wi-Fi router across the room, which when I'm in here, I usually cover it with some shielding fabric because I don't really need Wi-Fi because my iMac that I'm looking at here is hardwired. But what was crazy to me is I thought my workspace was going to be the worst and that my bedroom would inherently be the most chill. Turns out in my house, the bedroom is by far the worst EMF area in the whole house for a number of reasons that I don't have time to explore with you. Point is, hire a professional to tell you what's going on. Put your Wi-Fi on a nighttime timer for sure. Or as I said, just get rid of all Wi-Fi in your house and just hardwire. If you have money, dude, you can have the sickest house with all the technology and no Wi-Fi. Just have everything hardwired. It's a little expensive because, you got to sometimes tear walls out and run wires through them and patch them back up and repaint. And it's a whole thing. But man, when, not if, I have the coin, because you guys shop at lukestory.com a lot and support my advertisers. That's how my house is going to be. Remove the microwave oven from your kitchen. If you have to have a Wi-Fi router in your house, keep it as far as you can from your kids' room and definitely from your bedroom. I know many people living in a city like New York, your bedroom, living room, kitchen, dining room, and kids' room is all one room. You got a studio. That's tough. I don't know what you do there, but definitely, there are some things you can do to mitigate. And if you find, man, I'm just telling you guys, I love you so much because you're fellow humans and you listen to the show and I appreciate you. If you find you're living near a cell tower, I get messages all the time that someone will send me a picture. Hey, someone just sent me a picture yesterday. I just bought this condo in the penthouse. What should I do? Are these 5G? And they show me they're in the penthouse. Right on the roof are all these cell towers. It doesn't matter if they're 5G or freaking 1G. Dude, oh man, I was going to say you're living in a cancer incubation lab, but I don't want to put that into existence, but it's really, really dangerous to live close to cell towers. And if you live in a city, man, it's likely there's one really nearby. So I'm just going to, without fear, just something to really think about. If you have a smart meter on your home, get it removed. Hire an electrician, buy an analog meter on eBay, get an electrician on the download just to swap it out and tell the power company to blow you. You can also, if you can't get rid of your smart meter, you can get it shielded on both sides. There's little covers you can get to put over the smart meter. Then on the inside of your home, on the other side of the wall, you can get it shielded with these sheets of metal and paint and things like that. Keep all electronics away from your bed. Install a kill switch on your breaker box, which is what I do. So when I get into bed, I have a little remote and I just go beep and I hit that and all the power in my room is off. I live in a totally, at least electrical field free zone in my room because that's what was necessary because there's a lot of issues with the wiring in this house. And next, install a dirty electricity filter on your breaker box. And then it's called a, what's it called? Power. I think it's called the Power Perfect. Yeah, it's called the Power Perfect, and it's a pretty substantial box, kind of like half as big as your breaker box, and you have that professionally installed, of course, by a qualified and licensed electrician, and that filters all the dirty electricity coming in from the power lines on the street. So the power coming from the mains into your home is often dirty, and that just means it's an electricity that is chaotic and not organized in its nature and is much more deleterious to your health. And it also emits much further from devices and walls and outlets and things like that. So you filter the electricity coming in from the street, and then you install on every circuit in your house something called a pure power plug, which filters the dirty electricity in the interior wiring in your house that's being created by the appliances that you have that are actually producing dirty electricity. So in other words, you could filter it all coming from outside, but then inside your house, you have, a Dyson little heater, and that, because it's just not made well, actually turns all of the electricity on that circuit dirty, so that the lamp across the room that's on that same circuit as the Dyson is now emitting a 6-foot radius of dirty electricity right onto your couch where you take naps and chill out with your family. And again, I'm not trying to scare you. It's like, you go live a good life and not worry about any of this shit. You'll be fine. But if you want to be next level, as Carrie clearly does, asking this question, I'm giving you like the full-on real deal here, because why not? You deserve it. So again, you want to get the pure power plugs for the outlets, and you need only one per circuit. So let's say you have a wall that has 3 outlets and they're all on the same circuit, meaning if you hit the breaker box, it kills the power on those 3 plugs. You don't need 3 pure power little adapters. They're like a black, it kind of looks like just an adapter. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a fucking black thing you plug in the wall. You wouldn't need 3 of those. You'd only need 1, because if you plug 1 in, it cleans up that whole circuit. They're really cool. I found them through Brian Hoyer at Shielded Healing. He's really good at vetting these types of products, and they're the best that I've found on the market, and I have them in my site store. So if you go under EMF, you can find them there. Again, like, I'm not trying to scare you into buying shit off my site. Don't do it, and you'll probably be okay. But if you want to have a super healthy house, that's what I personally do in my house. So that's why I recommend it. As far as the meters go, Carrie, I have a tri-field meter. It's a model TF2, and that measures magnetic fields fairly accurately. And that's something that is really prevalent in a lot of houses, especially older homes that were done when our knowledge of home wiring was not as sophisticated, or when the regulations weren't as strict, and a lazy or incompetent electrician wired the home. If there is bad wiring, it produces magnetic fields within the home. And that's what's going on in the house I'm speaking to you from right now, which is why I put the kill switch on my house, because I don't want to pay to redo all the wiring in this home, which is a lease. For RF frequencies, I use something called the Acousticom 2, and that's pretty accurate for RF radio frequencies. Both of those are not going to take the place of a qualified building biologist or specialist to come in and screen your house, but they're pretty handy just to get an idea of what's going on in your home, and also especially for travel. So I'll usually bring that little Acousticom 2 when I travel, just so I can find like hidden Wi-Fi routers and stuff in my hotel room. I've had crazy shit happen. I remember I went up to Mammoth and I rented a cabin last year. And, kind of like not fancy, but cool, because it's out in the woods and I could cold plunge in the lake and chill with my girlfriend at the time. And it was a fun little trip. So we check in the room. Of course, she already thinks I'm nuts for doing all this shit, but it's how I roll. I get up my RF meter and I'm scanning the bedroom. I'm like, what the hell? There's a really strong frequency, like a super toxic level of RF coming from the bed. I pulled the bed out, and they had put the Wi-Fi router in the room right behind the headboard. And I don't care if you're like paranoid about EMFs or not. Anyone with like a fundamental understanding of science in general would say that's not a good idea to have your head next to a router all night. So I just unplugged that goddamn router every night when we went to bed. And I wouldn't have known that had I not had that little RF meter. So the meters are handy. Just know that like they're not that accurate. And if you're not a professional, you're not going to know how to really use them. For all these meters and EMF stuff, again, I have them on my site, or you can go to shieldedhealing.com. That's Brian Hoyer's site. And as I said, he's the guy that I trust when it comes to all these type of products. And you can get 10% off there using the code Lifestylist. That's shieldedhealing.com. And he also not only does home tours now, as he calls them, or he does city tours where he does like a home inspection rather, but he has a team of people he's kind of building that he trains around the states at least now that can come out to your home and test it. And I think that's a really great way to do it, as I said, because it's like, it just takes the guesswork out. And again, some of the areas in your home that you think are going to be really bad aren't that bad. And the places that you didn't suspect at all are horrible. So get someone like Brian Hoyer or a building biologist to come to your house. And I think you can book him or his people on his site if you're in the US, which is cool. Speaking of that, I have a 2-hour documentary video coming out soon that is the video of Brian coming to this very house and screening the entire house. It literally, I mean, it took much longer than 2 hours to screen the whole house because he's so psychotically thorough in his screening methodology. But it also just, even after the edits, there was like 2 solid hours of footage. And I told my video guy, we can't take any of those scenes out because they're important. He did geopathic stress and all kinds of different things that a lot of EMF people don't even look for. So you can look forward to that one. And with that, my friends, oh my God, I think we've come to the end. I'm hoping that I really provided some great value for you here. I'm exhausted. So it's like my chest is about to cave in from talking consistently for so long. But I'm trusting that you got something out of this. If you're still hearing this an hour and a half in, thank you so much for joining me and listening to this solo episode. I put a lot of time and energy into these because I care, and I care about you, your health, your happiness, your life. And this is what brings me the most pleasure, is just being able to learn about this stuff and share information. So speaking of sharing information, come back on Tuesday where I actually have a guest on the show. And that is the supremely psychedelic power of the Lucia light again. And the upcoming events are Bulletproof Conference, or I guess they don't call it that anymore. What's it called? The Upgrade Labs Biohacking Conference, March 27th through 29th. I'll be doing a breakout there with my friends from Samina Sleep Systems, Paleo FX, April 24th to 26th, Meet Delic, May 2nd through 3rd. And I would like to thank our sponsors, man. I've got my Blue Blocks on right now. You can go to blueblocks.com. That's BLUBLOX. Use the code Lifestylist and save 15%. And I've got mine on right now, as you can see if you're watching the YouTube video. I'm not bullshitting you. And the reason I have them on is because it's 12:25 a.m. and I have some hella bright blue lights on in this room, my studio lights, to make the video not look like one of those witness protection program, shadow videos that you may have seen. So definitely check out Blue Blocks, and you can rock and roll all night too and not trash your melatonin. Then Four Sigmatic. Today I did a coffee. I made a Zen Bunny biodynamic coffee, fresh ground beans and the whole deal. And I put a Four Sigmatic reishi and chaga packet in that coffee with some grass-fed butter and some bulletproof brain octane oil. And man, I was killing it. So tasty, so potent. That's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story for your medicinal mushroom elixir powders and also their instant coffee, man. That's probably like my favorite product those guys make. It's one that a lot of people don't talk about, I guess, because they're so famous for the mushrooms. And I like their mushroom products. I take other ones like Life Cycle and whatever's around the house. They're all, they're not all good. The ones that I use are all good. There's some super shitty mushroom products on the market, trust, but Four Sigmatic's awesome. But their coffee, the little packets of instant coffee, is bomb, especially for travel. So go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. The code there is Lifestylist, and that saves you 15% off your order. And then we've got Super Fat. And let me see, when did I use Super Fat? I always like to anecdotally, share my experience. I think just because I don't like, commercials in general, because they're, growing up, like TV commercials are so fake. It's like an actor. They don't have that goddamn Ford Fiat, whatever shit, you know what I mean? Like, see someone, I love my car, this laundry detergent, this cereal. Like, no, you don't. This is fake. I'm being lied to. That's why I always hated advertising. And I really was reluctant to put ads on my show. Then I realized I can't drop couple grand a month to produce my show, which is what it was in the beginning. It's much more now. So I was happy to take on sponsors, but I had to promise myself, just out of my own integrity, that I have to believe in the products and probably use them. And Super Fat, I do. I had one 2 nights ago. I had I think it's the coffee flavored one. Yeah, not coffee flavored. It has coffee and macadamia nuts and almonds and just really good healthy fats. And the Super Fat little travel packets are freaking dope because they're so, calorie dense and filling because they're just like all fat. They're also, of course, keto. And there's no carbs in there. And so I really like them because when I get hungry driving around and flying and whatnot, dude, homie will stop at Chevron and like bust out a Snickers or like 2 packs of M&Ms with just because I'm like, God, I'm hungry. I just need something. And so I'll go in a store that just sells poison and I'll eat poison. And then I'll bless it and be very positive about it and just live my life. But if I have these little super fat packets in my car, in my merce, as I call it, my man purse, it's a little feminine bag that I carry around and I'm proud of it. I keep my super fats in there and all kinds of supplements, all my shit, my blue carnitine, there's just things I can't live without, or I think I can't live without. And the super fat has become part of my arsenal so that no matter where I am, I have a little mini meal that's very satiating and healthy because of its high, healthy fat content. So I'd love for you to get your grubby little hands on some super fat as well. You can do so by going to this really easy to remember URL known as superfat.com. That's superfat.com. The code there is Luke, and you're going to save 15% off. And you will thank me because you're going to be so full and so healthy. And you'll be like, God damn, these little mini meals from Superfat are so convenient. And with that, my friends, I'm going to sign off and thank you profusely and authentically and wholeheartedly from the depths of my soul for listening to this very long and hopefully thorough and enjoyable podcast with yours truly, Luke Story. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back in your eardrums on Tuesday where we talk about this crazy ass psychedelic light called the Lucia. Peace.